Hello everybody, you're welcome to my YouTube channel once again, and today I'll be discussing with you on how to create a Docker file and what Docker is. So basically Docker is a platform and ecosystem for developing and running application inside of containers. And containers, they are basically a lightweight, portable and self-sufficient environment that it encapsulates all of the application, its dependencies, and this makes it easy for you to run and deploy your application. And you can also forward that, and there will be some kind of consistencies across different environments, across different development phase, across different testing phase, and even in production. So in the world of Docker, there are actually some key terminologies that you come across. We have what we call the Docker engine, we have containers, we have Docker file, we have Docker images, and we have Docker registry, Docker compose, and so many of these. So basically I will discuss with you what this basic terminology stands for, what they do, and how you can use them. Now, the first thing you actually interact with is what we call the Docker engine, which is the core component of Docker. This is responsible for creating all of your images. This is responsible for managing your containers, and it also include a REST API and command line, interface where you can do write some of the code, where you can write some of those instructions as if you're having it on the Linux distribution system. And then another very common term you come across when you are in the Docker field, you hear what we call containers. And containers are basically an instance of your Docker image. It's a running instance of your Docker image. So containers, they are package of your applications where you and the dependencies, where you have all of them in a single unit, and they ensure that your application run consistently regardless of the device or the environment they are currently on. So containers help you to achieve this. It doesn't matter what kind of operating system that app is running on. It could be Windows, it could be Mac, it could be Linux, whatever that may be. So containers helps you to have the same experience wherever these applications are currently running. And one thing about containers is that they are isolated from the host system. That is why they give you the same experience wherever you are running them. And the containers make sure that your applications are secured and they are also portable. And then the next thing is the Docker file. Docker file is just it's just like a text file, that contains some set of instructions that will help you in building your Docker image, right? In the next very few seconds, I will show you how a Docker file looks like and some of the basic instruction you have there. And Docker file also helps you to define the base image. They help you to set. That is where you set up the environment. That is where you put the instruction on the files to copy and how you configure your containers, and every of those instructions you want to have, you write them within a Docker file. And then we have the Docker image. The Docker image is a read-only template, that contains every of the application code, every of the libraries, every of the dependencies, that require for your applications to run. Now, images are created, and then from the images, the runnable instance of the images will give you what we call the Docker container. And another very important thing within the Docker ecosystem is what we call the Docker registry. And Docker registry is basically a place where your images are stored and then where they are shared. Docker registry, they are like the hub of your Docker images. Okay, so and this is like the GitHub where you store your project, your code base, and all of that. So that is in basic format what Docker registries are. And then we also have Docker Compose. It's a tool where you define your how you want your containers to run. This is where this is where you have you create like a YAML file and all of that for your images, and how you want to how you want to configure them, and every of those how the kind of volumes you want to have, every of those instructions, you have them there within your Docker Compose, and they are usually a YAML file where you kind of describe the network, the volumes, and every of the special things that you want to have. And we also have the Docker orchestration, and for Docker orchestration, and we have like Docker Swarm, which are some container orchestration platform where you can manage, where you can spin up, where you can run up some kind of clusters and all of that. So that is some of the terminologies you come across whenever you are within the Docker ecosystem where you want to work with Docker and all of that. So basically, I will show you how to briefly create your Docker image using JavaScript Node.js, and this is pretty similar with every of the stack out there, and just some couple of things you need to change, but the concept is actually very pretty the same, and you just need to change based on the stack you're currently working in, and flow with how that works. And you can check some docs on how you can create that of maybe for Python or Java or C Sharp or any of the stack you're currently on. So I'll walk you through a step-by-step guide on how to do that with Node, and how you can create the Docker image, how you can create the Docker container, how we can run that, and see how it also runs both locally and also using Docker. So before I go into creating of the Docker file, which will contain the set of instructions for creating our Docker images, I want to explain to you what are some of the basic things, or what the Docker file is basically made up of. So the Docker file is actually having some kind of major layers, and some of the the way you define or put in those layers within your Docker file, they are very important. And take for instance, we have the first layer you have will in most cases be the runtime, or the environment, or the operating system where the app will run on. And after that, you can kind of have some layers where you have your code bases, and after your code bases, you can kind of have some instructions that will have you copy your code bases. After that, you kind of have your dependencies, and after your dependencies, then you can bring in your instructions on how to run your application. So these steps are very important for you to follow, and they have to follow this pattern. That is, if the let me put in some tools here to explain some of those concepts. So let just want to make some assumption here. So if we have the first layer here, which might represent the parent code base, then what should come next should be your code which you want to copy, which are some of those your files which you have, maybe your server file, your env, and all of that. And then after that, the next layer which should come next should be their dependencies and every of the packages you want to use your app needs to run on. And that's how this thing keeps on piling. Now, one thing you should take note of is so let me take this, we can call this the parent, and then the child, and then what do I call this right now? Let me call this grandchild. So now it's important this file gets added into your Docker file in this pattern. This should come from the very bottom all the way up. So the parents should not come. The child should not come before the parents. Okay, so we have to follow this pattern, this order. Now, take for instance, if we are creating a Node.js application, which I want to demo and show you real quick, we need to first thing add a Node.js runtime engine here, because we'll be creating our application will be running on Node.js server. Okay, so Node.js is actually the runtime where every of the application will be running on. So we have to add the runtime first, and then next we can copy our codes, and after copying our code, then we can go ahead and install every of the dependencies we will be needing, and it goes all the way up like that in order of preference. So quickly I will go to my code editor. I will spin up a basic Node.js Express application. I'll run that locally, and then we'll create a Docker file and Docker image for that, and then we'll create Docker container and also run it and also test to see how that is being implemented using Docker. So I'll go to my VS Code editor, open a new window, and I'll quickly cd to my desktop, and then while on my desktop I'll make a new directory. I'll call it Docker practice, and then let me cd into Docker practice on my directory. And so yeah, here we have it on my VS Code editor. Let me zoom this out a little bit. So, and then let me minimize this. Now I want to bootstrap a Node.js Express application. I want to create a basic server, and then we Dockerize application. So for you to bootstrap or start any Express application, you need to run the command npm init, and then you put a -y flag to skip every of the questions that will be asked while trying to spin up an Express.js application. So before I do that, let me do ls so we can see currently our folder is empty. Then I can run the command npm init -y, and this will create a package.json flag for us. And if I do ls right now, you see we have a package.json. So now I need basically just Express and nothing more for this very demo. So I run the command npm install Express, and okay, so let me see why that is. Npm install Express, or you can use the command npm I express, and this will okay, let's say when I fix this, I need to run that. I don't know what why I'm having that using npm. Let me try that with Yan and see. Okay, so I have Express installed. I'll check what's wrong with my my npm version and why I'm having this error, by the way. So if I take a look at my package.json, and let me open that up, you can see I have Express currently installed on my dependency. So that's by the way though, and the aim of this course is to show you how to create a Docker file. So for that, on my script file, let me add a script to spin up to start my server. And if I run the command start, that means I want to run a file which I will be creating this time around index.js. So I want to run node index.js. Node is my runtime, so I want to run node index.js. Okay, and for now, let me create the index.js file where I will have my basic Express server with it, index.js. Okay, right now I have my index.js file. So this is JavaScript using the common module. So I have to import Express, and that is Express Express equal require also require Express. This is const. I'm missing my s there. Okay, so I now have Express, and then I want to create app from Express. I can then go ahead and say const app, to get the app from my Express. And okay, now I can bootstrap my app and say app.listing. So I want to listen on a certain port. I want to listen on the port, which I don't have that yet, but I'll create my port. And then I'll just want to log a message once my server is started. I want to log the message and say HTTP local. So I have a double colon there. Localhost colon and then the port which my server is currently running on. Port, but currently I don't have the port, so let me just create a port, and you can give this any port you want to give it. So I want to give my port 3200, and so yeah, let me start my server this time around and see our server is started with no any message. I just want to start a basic Express server with no any route and nothing to log on the screen. So if I run the command yarn start, because I've defined that in my package.json script file, this is spin up and start my server. So yarn start, and the app is starting, and currently our server is started and it's on port 3200. So if you go to this address, you definitely get no message. Let me open that up, and our server is started, and it's currently showing cannot get because we don't have any route to this endpoint. So let me quickly create a route, and for that we can have a route of app.get so get there, app.get, and then any route, any default route of slash, and then I want to create the express function, and then I just want to here I just want to return this. Have an input parameter of request and response. And if you want to know more about how to create an express function, you can check that out in another tutorial on my YouTube channel. I will drop the link in the description below. So I want to return response.status of 200, and then I want to send a JSON message of welcome to server. I just want to send a message of welcome to server. Okay, so let me stop my application once again and try to run that try to run and start an application. And if I run the command yarn start once again, and our server is currently started, and once I go to the browser, and here we get this JSON message which I just created, welcome to server, and we can see I'm having this kind of nice format here. If you try to check that on your own machine, you might be having this raw kind of message of welcome to server. I'm having this kind of pretty arrangement because I have JSON app extension installed on my browser, so you can check that out as well. So I have this kind of nice JSON arrangement here on my system because of the extension. So this is the basic server of with Express. So I just want to add two routes where we can make some posts and some push and some get requests on some user info. So for that, I will not be using any database. Let me just create an array of user. Let me call it user data, and within my user data I want to have that to be an empty array. So for my records and for the user, I want to just my post request. I want to have that. Um, I want to have that. I want to get some couple of response from the user, just some basic information about the user. I want to get a username. I want to get user email, and then just username and email, and just basically that. And this is what I'm talking about. So within, I want to have a name. I want to have maybe a name of J, and then I want to have. Let me make this nicely formatted. I want to have a name of J. I want to have a age of 20. So just basically just these two things, and we'll have another user want the same thing also to be added. So let me minimize, and then let's have a lot of space on that. So I want to have app.post routes, so the user will submit a form for us to get this data. And for the post, I want to have the endpoint should be /create, and then for that I want to have an express function of request, response, and then so I want to grab those information from the user's requested body, so I can go ahead and say const, we need a name and we need an age here. This is coming from request.body. Now I'm destructuring that from the form which the user will actually send to us. All right, so this is, I'm trying to grab the body, I'm trying to grab the name and the email from the requested body. If you don't want to do that, you can do you can go this way. You can go ahead and say const name equal request dot body dot name, and then you can also have the age also. This let me change this to age. You can have it this way. All right, if you don't want to destructure, if you want to grab each one of them individually one after the other, you can go this way, but I would prefer to go with this the structured pattern. This is much more neater and more professional to work with. So currently I have the name, I have the age from the requested body, and I just want to push that right now into my array. And sorry, I think I forgot to add that we need to have an ID here of ID of 1 maybe, yeah. So each item in there, I want to give it some IDs and all of that, and that is how that's basically what I want to get. So I can get the ID will be let me go, the ID will be, so if we have one item there, the next item will have an ID of 2, and on and on and on like that. So I want to have my ID to be user data, which is the array we have, like database this time around. I want to get the dot length, so that is our ID. Then the next thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and say user data. This is now we're pushing information into that. The push. I want to push an object this time around. I want to push ID. Want to push the name, and also want to push. These are the keys we need within our items right there. So this will create the user, and then next let me have a get endpoint that will get us all of this information. App.get, and then we'll have just all, so just all, and we can leave it that way. So I have a request, and I have a response too, and then here I just want to return a response. Oh, sorry about that. Here I forgot, I'm supposed to return with a response. So I just want to return a response. The status. So whenever you create, you need to send a status code of 201. That's the right status code for you to send whenever there's any successful create using that's the right status code for the HTTP method. So I want to have a message of just success, and we want to return that. And then for the get all user, I just want to return let me return rest.status of 200, and then I want to have a JSON of user of data, or you can call it record, and then that is a user data. So that is basically it for the get and the post, and this is how I want to structure. That's basically all we need for this basic test and Express API. So we need to go test right now on Postman, but before we do that, I want to point out here that for you to receive some form data from the user using Express, you need some middlewares that will enable you to accept some form data or form input from the user. And for us, one of the middleware we can work with is Express.js. So we need to use that by saying app.use, want to call it braces, want to get the Express.json middleware. Okay, so this middleware will enable you to read user input that is on the form. Okay, whenever user is sending you in the form, and if you don't enable this middleware or some other middleware that will enable you to read form input from the user, then you might actually be getting some kind of exceptions, some kind of errors, and you won't be able to read and get any information from your request body. So this middleware will enable you have that. You can work with body parser, but and that was the old way of doing it. Express.json also gives you the same functionality. So that's all. Let me test this quickly right now on my Postman, and after that we'll go ahead and dockerize application, push it to Docker Hub, and then we'll run it also from the Docker images. So for that, let me stop this once again and run the command yarn start. Okay, my app is now started, it's up and running. Let me go to Postman and test this application. So if you don't have Postman on your application, there is actually this VS Code extension you can work with. It's called REST client. So let me show you what that extension look like. It's called REST client, this one right here. So if you don't have Postman or Insomnia or any of the testing tool out there, this is a VS Code extension you can work with, and that is what I'll be using to test my API, and I'll show you how it can also work. So all you need to do is just get this extension, which is free on VS Code, and test with it. Or there's also another extension which is called Thunder Client, and that is have almost the same feature kind of UI with VS Code, and this is it right here. Just go to extension, and we have here Thunder Client, and I have it also installed on my system. So let me quickly test with Thunder Client, and after that we'll also test with the REST client, which I showed you just now. So I have here on my extension Thunder Client. Let me open that up and just click on new request, and here you can just go ahead and put in your endpoint. So I want to test, let me go once again to my, let me close this up and go to my terminal and copy this address. This is where my server is currently running on, and go to Thunder Client. Okay, and let me remove all of these and put that in. So once I hit on get, and you can see welcome to server, which is the basic address I actually made use of whenever we try to test the default home page. So right now I want to quickly test the all endpoint that will get us every of the user within a record. And once I try to send this, we currently have just one user within our database, which was the user I had coded. If you check right here, this is the user I had coded. So if we try to just get all the user this time around, we have just one user and no much more records. So let me add a new user this time around into our array. So the endpoint is create, and it's a post request. So I'll come here and remove this from all. Let me change it to create, and then the HTTP method is post, and come in here within our body, and we need to select this JSON, and then open our curly braces and put in our data. We need a name, and then let me put the name to be Joy, and then the other variable we need to add is the age variable, and that's I want to put it to be 78. Okay, so this is the two basic things we need to add our user, and then once I try to hit on the send this time around, so we get a message of success. So our user has been added. Now we'll have two records. Let me add another user once again. Let me add John, and then let me change the age to 90, and then once I try to send that, also get a success, status code of 201, which was the status code we gave it. And now let me try to get all user within an array. So if I hit on the all and try to send that, oh sorry, the method is get, not post, so that's why we are getting the 400 not found. This route, there's no any route of all slash post, and then we can remove this body, but that is not really having any effect on our code. So right now let me test and see if I get that, and we have a status code of 200, and let me take a look at our data, and okay, so the ID, the ID is supposed to be of length plus 1 because we're not starting from 0, but we can see the ID is actually increasing anyway. So never mind, I'll correct that, and we'll go right ahead and create a Docker file. So the ID should be, since we already have one item in there, so the ID should be where is it? This ID.length plus 1. So quickly let me test once again. If I try to do a get this time around, we'll have one item because we're using array. So items, oh, I need to restart my server once again because I made some changes this time around, and stop it and then restart the server, and server is currently running. So if I try to get all record this time around, we'll only have just one because my server is started and every of the record in there is currently gone whenever we try to restart our server, because there is an in-memory data which is our array. So if I try to create, and this time around use the post, so successfully added a user, and then let me add another user once again and reduce this. I want to add Tom, and then Tom is 30. So once I hit on the send, we successfully added two users. This time around let me test again, or change this to get. If I send that, okay, let's see our record. We have the first user J, which is the default user we had coded. We have JHN, which is ID2, and we have Tom. So this is basically it on our basic Express server. And quickly let me show you how you can also test this if you don't want to install this Thunder client, the testing tool. If you want to work with the REST client, all you need to do is to create a file, and the file should have the extension of REST. So let me call it let me just call it postman, any name you want to give it, postman.rest. So make sure you have this .rest extension on the file, so that will give you the kind of HTTP file you want to create. And so let me, oh sorry, I want to create the file, so I need to put code before the name of my file. Okay, so good. I have my postman file right here. So all what you need to do is let me just copy the route what we have here. Let me copy that, and once I paste that in here, and this is our endpoint. All right, so once I hit on this, and that will make the HTTP request to our API and get us the response. So once I try to send that, okay, let me put the method here. Just put the method at the front, and that will give you the response. So when I try to send that and saying the connection was rejected, blah 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 blah, while we're having that, let me see if the server is up and running, and oh, the server is actually not running this time around, so I need to start my server once again. Run yarn start. Okay, server is currently running on port 32. Now let me test it on my REST client. And when you send the GET request, so even if we don't put the GET method, this will still work. Let me remove that first, and so you can see. So if we're sending a GET request, you don't necessarily need to put the GET method, because but the default UTP method, this will assume is the GET method. So once I hit that, and it sends the GET request to our endpoint, and we can see the response right here. So if I send the GET request to the default route, and we get the welcome to server message. Okay, but I think it's important to just put in your method right there, and that is important, and much more beautiful for you to see. So for the other endpoints, the get, the post, the put, and the delete, you have to put the HTTP method right there, so your REST client don't just assume or work with the default get method. So I want to add some couple of endpoints. You can have as many endpoints as you want to get on your REST client. All you need to do, if you want to put in some more, let me copy this method. I want to get that for the create, and the endpoint here is create. I remember the method is post. All right, now if you see this, for this to be independent of the first method which we're having right here on REST client, all you need to do is add 3 hash symbol, and then that will create this as a separate endpoint from what we have previously. Okay, if you don't do that, then this won't work. And then let me close this. So this is a post endpoint, and we need to send in some data. Let me go to my REST client postman and copy that and put in the JSON REST data right there, and I have this. So for the postman client, we also need to let it know what kind of data we are sending, just like the way we have it here on Thunder client, or the way you have it on your postman. You also need to select you need to know what kind of data you're sending on your body. So we'll have to put that right at the very top, and we can have that as the content type. This option we have right here, and that is application JSON. Okay, you need to select that, or else that won't work. All right, so that is basically it. Now let me try to if I try to get all response, we have just one user. Now let me try to make the post request. We have a message of success. This is how from a REST client. And if I try to get all user once again, you can see right now we have 2 users. So basically that is how you can test your API. That's how you can test your RESTful API with Thunder client, or how you can test it with Postman REST, which are extensions you can have on your VS Code, and it's also very, very lightweight. It offers you almost all the features you can get with Postman, with Insomnia, or any of the testing tools out there. So that is basically it. Right now we will create a Docker file, and we'll see how we can put in every of our instructions on how to create Docker file and how that works. So for that, I think I can stop my server this time, and let me clear up my terminal, and I need to create the file. I'll call it Docker file. And so for the Docker file, you actually need to give it this name, Docker file, and you cannot you don't need to give it an extension, maybe .js or .txt or whatever. The name should be Docker file, just like this. All right, and if you give it any other name, maybe you give it my Docker file, or you kind of change the name, or you kind of make this a lowercase, that won't work. Okay, and this is very, very important. You should take note of. So the name should be a Docker file, and the D should be of uppercase D, and then I'll have that. And this is where we'll need to put in every of our instruction in creating our Docker file. Let me close all of this so we'll have more space in our project. Okay, so now the first thing you need to do is just like I earlier explained right here, we need to kind of follow this kind of pattern, the structure in writing all of our files in writing all of our files in our Docker file. You need to first thing put in the parent elements that your app depends on or work with, which is majorly the runtime environment. Then you need to copy the codes, and that's like representing the child, and then we need to install all of our dependencies, and the process go on and on like that. So for the since this is an Express application, we need to get a Node.js runtime environment. So we need to get, and we need to go write the instruction from Node, and then we also need to tell what version of Node we want to get, or else this can give whenever this file is being run, then it will get us any of the latest available Node versions. So we want to stick to a particular version of our Node, and we want to go with our Node version 17 and the Alpine version. And if you want to know much more about this Node version we're working on, or some of these parent elements I'm working on, you can just go to Docker. Just go to Docker Hub on Google, and yeah, this is where you can see some images and some parent images you can work with and install on your applications. We have some couple of them right here. We have you can see it right here. We have PostgreSDB, and we have so much more now. If you want to know what version of Node you want to work with, or which one you should go for, you can just come in here on the search button and search for Node.js or Node anyway, and then you can see that pop up on your search response. So if you click on that, and these are the various versions of Node out there you can work with. All right, so we have version 18 and all of that. There are some other older version you can work with. So for this very basic demo, so this is a very basic demo on how to create a basic Node.js Docker file, and I want to go with the Node 17 Alpine version, which is kind of very, very old. It's not even amongst some of the latest supported stack out there. We have version 20 Alpine and all of that. You can choose to work with any of these depending on what Node version your app is currently built on. You can go with that option. So I want to select Node.js Alpine version, and let me go to my drawer. And then the next thing we need to do is to copy every of our files. Okay, and when I say the files, I'm talking about, let me run ls. So currently we have the index.js, we have node modules. We're not going to be copying node modules. Actually, we need package.json, and that is basically what we need. So for that, we need to write the next line of instructions. You can give some space, but that does not really matter. And each lines of code or instruction on your Docker file actually represents these layers, which are represented right here on my diagram. So the next thing we want to do, we want to copy after getting our node time run engine, and then we need to copy every of the file, all right, which we have. And if you check right here on when I try to list every of my files, we have the Docker file, the index.js, this is where we have our server installed, and every of our Express application in there. Also have a package.json and all of that. So I want to copy all of this, and they are currently in the same directory, the same folder with this. So we want to copy what we have here, all right, and we want to copy that into a directory, all right, which will be created on our Docker image, all right, on our Docker when we create this image. So we want to copy all of that from this directory. Now if we put a dot here, this will copy all of the file, all right, into the current directory or into the home directory of where our app is currently on. All right, now it's very important we create a kind of a file where we want every of these items to be copied to, because it's possible we might have some kind of name conflict or some kind of some other maybe file that is in there within this directory which we are currently in. So if we want to copy that, if we want to copy all this file right here into a directory which we will be creating ourselves, then we can add that here by saying want to copy everything into this current directory and then into a folder which will be let me call it, you can call it app, you can give it any name you want to give it, you can call it my app or any way you want to have it, but one of the most conventional use is the app folder. All right, so now if this app folder is already there existing in a machine, and then every of the file will be copyright in there, but if that is not created, if there's no file or if there's no directory of app, then this instruction will create that and then copy every of this file we have right here into this app directory, and that is it. And then the next thing we need to do is to install our dependencies, just like I explained right here. So this is, we have a node runtime, I think I'll put that in here. We have our codes all come in here. We have our dependencies come in next. Now you should know that it's very important we have our codes before install our dependencies, because our dependencies are actually in here within our package.json file. All right, so we cannot go ahead and install dependencies before copying them, because if you try to do that, there's actually no package.json yet, so no dependencies will be installed. That is why we have to copy every of our file before installing dependencies. Now to install the dependencies, this is actually very similar to the way we do it by default on our terminal, right? You remember when we want to add our dependencies for the packages we all will work with, we run the command npm install and then all of that, and same way we're gonna have that also, that some we want to write that instruction. So for that we need to use the run keyword, which will execute every command or instruction, right? So just like you can see some kind of intelligence here, the run help us to execute some commands which will be coming next. And what do we want to run? We want to run the command npm install. Okay, yeah, so we want to run npm install, and that will install every of our dependencies that this app currently work or depends on. Now there's actually a little bit of problem right here, because if you try to run this command npm install, right, we are currently running this command on the home route, that is this dot route here, but with the instruction we have on line 3, every of our file including our package.json is in a subdirectory which is called app. All right, so we need to, when you try to run this command npm install, this will try to look for the package.json which is currently not in the home directory which we are currently in. This is in a subdirectory of app, so that can break, that won't work because there's no package.json here at the moment. So for us to do that, we need to let Docker know where to run every of our commands. All right, whenever we want to run every of our commands, we need to let Docker know where that should be coming from. Now take for instance, if I have my package.json in a file, in a directory, I mean here, maybe the directory is test directory or something, then we need to, if we want to do that on our terminal, we can run the command maybe this way. Maybe we want to copy that, we need to put a dot slash and then the name of the directory and all of that. Okay, so for us to do that on Docker, we need to let Docker know the default directory where most of our instructions will be coming from. All right, and we have to put that right in here on line. We can put that before copying of our files by declaring work vir, and then we want to put where that will be coming from. So we want every of our work directory to be in this app wrap. That's where we'll have in every of our files, every of our function, every of our files, and every code is actually in this app directory. So we just put the slash app. All right, so you don't need to put the dots, and then just the slash app flag. So whenever we run these instructions, npm install, this will by default run the instruction based on the package.json which we have right in here within our app.js. And then the next thing we need to do is to start our application, right? Because we already have we've copied our codes, we've installed our dependencies, and we've even we will inform Docker where our directory, where our work directory is. So and the command for that is cmd, and then what's the instruction? Want to run node, want to run a file which is app index.js. All right, so this is the instruction for us to run our application. Now this is coming right from what we have in our package.json. Let me show you the command in our package.json. So just like the way we see it, this is the command snippet we use in starting our application, node index.js. So that is exactly what we will need to write in here within our cmd file. All right, so now admin, we have maybe some instruction here, node test, and then some kind of bunch of command. Then we also need to have all of that within our cmd array and right in here. All right, we need to separate them by commas. So that is basically it. And lastly, we also need to expose the port our server is currently running on. Okay, because and in order for us to do that, we need to put the command expose. We need to expose the port our server is currently on. And if you check our app is currently running on, let me take a look at that code index.js. Our app is currently running on port 3200. So let me put the port 3200. So that is pretty it. That is all we need to do to run our Docker unsafe, for us to create a Docker file with Node.js. Very, very simple and straightforward. Okay, let me run through it once again. First thing is you need to add the runtime you want your app to work on. We just need Node.js, and basically that's all the runtime we need. All right, so we need to get that since this is a JavaScript Node.js Express application, and from that we need to tell Docker what our current working directory is. We also need to copy. Then the next thing to do is to copy of our files before we install our dependencies, and after installing our dependencies, just expose our port on where our app is running on. So this will be mapped to whichever port we want to expose from our Docker once we are running our container. We'll see that shortly. And then the command to run our app. Now currently you can see we are using run here to install dependencies. Remember I said the run command helps you to execute some code instruction, and here to start the app we're not using run but we are using cmd. Now there's a slight difference between the run command and the cmd, right? So the run command actually executes your commands when the container, right, when you're creating the image, right, when you're trying to run this your Docker file to create the image, whereas the cmd command helps you execute some sort of instructions, right, when the image is already created. And one thing I want to let you know is that the image is read only, right? The image cannot be modified, you cannot edit the image, you cannot update the image. So if you make some changes to this image, what will actually happen is you have to recreate this image. All right, so you cannot edit the image, you cannot update the image. It is read only, and that's how it works. So our Docker file is now ready. Everything is completed. The next thing I want to show you is we need to ignore some file we don't want to copy, all right, into our Docker image. Now I believe it's very important we ignore, just like the way when we want to push our code to GitHub, we ignore some files which are not important or relevant to our GitHub repo. So same thing with our Docker file as well. So we need to ignore the node modules, and also we need to ignore basically the node modules. We also need to ignore this Postman red, because we don't need that in production or in our Docker file. So for that we have a file which we call .docker ignore, and that is the file that will help you to ignore every of those files. You can call it .docker ignore or Docker ignore file. Oh, I want to create that file, so let me put the code instruction before that. Okay, so within our Docker ignore, we want to ignore the file node underscore modus, and also want to ignore the file node modus, and also want to ignore this. You can ignore the unlock as well. I think let me ignore that too. I want to ignore the unlock, and I have that here. Okay, so right now our file is ready. We've ignored every of the file we don't want to copy into our Docker hub, and we don't want to have that in our Docker registry, because once we try to install this npm, that will get us every of the basic dependencies we need, and all of the necessary files that this app will require to run. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is to run the basic command to start our Docker application, to create the Docker image. And the command to run that is all you need to do is run this command: docker build. You need to put that C flag, and then we give the image a name, and let me call this basic node, and that is the name I want to give the image. You can give it some kind of tag or some kind of version flag, so you can kind of separate that, and for us to kind of know the versions and every update we're making. But I don't want to put that, and then I just want to put the dot. All right, I want to create the dot actually tells Docker, right, where a Docker file is. This is the file that this command snippet we use to build our Docker image. So the dot is trying to tell it where this Docker file is. So since we have it in our current working directory, just put the dot flag, so that will grab the Docker file in this current directory where we are in. If we have the Docker file maybe in src folder, we can go ahead and put /src, and that will get us the file from there, and use the file, the instruction within the file, to build that image. So we have it right in here within this current directory where we're in. So just leave the dot flag. Okay, and this I will leave this command snippet on the description below, and you can also check that on Google on the command snippet on how to build a Docker file. So, and then it's Docker build, sorry, not Docker builds. I have a typo here. Docker build -t, and then the name of the app and where your Docker file is. So once I hit on enter on my keyboard, and you can see our app is currently building. And one thing I want you to note is the app will be built right from the first line of code which we have here, which is directly following the sample I gave right here. All right, so the Node app will first of all be installed. The our work directory will be created. We'll copy all of our files, and that's everything will get added. Okay, and now before we actually create this Docker file, you need to have Docker running on your computer. You need to have Docker desktop. Also, you need to have that also running on your computer, and because this will be created, and that will get the image will get pushed to your Docker that will also get pushed to your Docker. The Docker image will get pushed to your Docker desktop and in your Docker registry account. So currently this is breaking when we try to run npm install. Okay, I think I'm missing the instruction somewhere. You can, just like the way I have it on my system when I was trying to do that locally, instead of using npm, I run yarn. So let me just run yarn here, not npm. You can work with npm, and that's also good, and that will install every of the dependencies which we have. All right, let me run the command once again, and our image is creating. And okay, so it's actually okay. We'll have some errors running this time around, and okay, I forgot to remove this because since we already indicated our working directory right here, we don't need to tell Docker, we don't need to go into this route whenever we want to copy once again, because here we identify where our working directory is. So when you do copy what we have currently right here on our local machine to the dot, this dot will actually work with indicated work directory which we have right here on line 3. So that was why this was breaking. Now if you read the error message there, it's saying where's the error message once again? So okay, good. Now when we're trying to run the npm install the first time, so that was breaking, not npm, my bad. So when we tried to run the npm install, so that was breaking because there was no file of app package.json, right? So we need to, so just leaving the dots right here will work perfectly fine. So let me try to run this command once again, and you can change that to npm install, and let me change that back to npm install, and now run my docker build command once again. Okay, so we've copied over of our dependencies, run npm install. We see that successfully passed, and our image is now built. All right, so if I go to my Docker to check for this image which we just created, where is it once again? Basic node. So go to your Docker desktop, and okay, here I have my Docker container right here, and once I open that up and go to images, okay, I'm on images right now, and this is the basic node image we just created. All right, you can see it right here, and just like we will have it, this was created less than a minute ago. So that is basically how you can create your Docker image, and we also have it right there on our server and on our Docker, and we can run this container, all right, and see how our image run on the container. All right, so you can click on this run button right here, and that will spin up your container, create a runnable instance for you, and you can also test that locally, and that will be reading from the Docker. All right, so if you push this image to anybody and once they try to get the image, and when they run that, and this will also get they will also run the image, without them having to install Node on their machine and doing all of the dirty work. All right, so the container actually contains every of the things your image depends on, every of the dependencies and every of the files and everything your image needs to work on, and they will have the same experience they will have just like the way you had when you're running this application on your system. All right, so that is basically it. In the next video I will show you how you can run this container directly right here on your Docker, and then how you can test that locally. All right, you can click on this run button right here and test your app, or you can also write the command snippet just like the way we have it right here on our terminal, on how you can run your already existing image so you can get a runnable instance of it, and also how you can test it. Thank you very much for sticking around. See you in the next section.